Hello, my name is David Cornuda, and I am a rocket scientist. So today I'll be answering a couple of questions. The first question is, how did I get my job? So I got my job through a lot of hard work, a lot of school, studying. I went through an engineering program, and before that, I just had a love for rockets and building things in my free time. So I definitely would suggest, if you have an interest in working on anything that goes to space, to definitely pursue it in your free time and just be passionate about the things that you like to do. Okay, the next question. How do they get the space station up in space? So the space station is actually an international project where countries from around the world have worked together over the course of many, many years. So the way that the space station was built in space is one little piece at a time. So the space shuttle carried little pieces that each country provided, and those pieces were assembled on orbit in space until the entire space station was built as a whole. Okay, next question. Why did they stop manned missions? And so I think what that question means is, why did they end the space shuttle program? So the space shuttle used to carry astronauts, American astronauts, into space. This is how they built the space station. And that program was retired after many, many years. In fact, there was around 136 flights of the space shuttle carrying many astronauts into low Earth orbit. The reason why the program was ended was because the cost was very high to launch the vehicle. When the space shuttle was first invented, the idea was that they were going to reuse the shuttle over and over and over, and it would make the cost go down. What ended up happening over time is that the cost went up and up and up, because to refurbish or fix the space shuttle after each launch ended up costing a lot more money than NASA had originally planned for. So people still get into space today, but today they ride on Russian rockets. China has a very strong space program, and they're sending astronauts into space as well. And if you do a little bit of research, you'll find out that NASA is currently building a new rocket that's super massive and can carry a large crew of American astronauts to the moon and hopefully eventually even to Mars. This is called the SLS, or the Space Launch System, which is a massive rocket that no country has built anything similar to this except all the way back in the 1960s with the Apollo missions. Okay, the next question is, what is the cost of a spaceship? So the cost of a rocket typically varies widely from something very small that could maybe launch, a small cube into orbit, all the way up to something massive that will carry humans all the way to the moon, kind of like the Apollo mission. So just to give you an idea, is something like a Saturn V, which is one of the biggest rockets ever made. Those cost over $1 billion each time they were launched. A smaller rocket can cost several $million. Rockets that we build at my company, like the Atlas V, can cost around $100 million or so, and we go all the way up to a Delta IV Heavy, which costs about $350 million. So it's very expensive. And the main reason why they're expensive is because all the parts have to be made perfect, and they don't make a lot of those parts. They're very custom, specialized parts that cost a lot of money to make them so perfect, because if anything goes wrong with the rocket, the whole thing blows up and you lose everything. Okay, next question. How long does it take to get to Jupiter's moon, Europa? So the orbits of the planets, we all go around the sun in the same direction. And so if you were to plan a trip to Jupiter, you'd want to leave when your spacecraft has to travel the least distance. So that would be when the Earth and Jupiter are on the same side of the Sun. So this also varies based on the size of the rocket that you use to push it. So if you used a really huge rocket to push a really small satellite, you'd be able to make it get there very quickly. It'd be a lot of energy put into a small object flying very fast. If you had a less powerful rocket and you had a big satellite, then it would get there more slowly because it'd be less energy pushing a big heavy object towards Jupiter. So on average, we're talking years to get there. Some spacecraft have taken up to 8 years to reach Jupiter. So you're talking about a time period in someone's career where you design something, send it off, and then you're waiting many years before it actually arrives at Jupiter. And that concludes the questions. So I hope you enjoyed that. And again, this is information from a real rocket scientist. And thanks again.